Hello my dear friends and family, I'm Operator Starsky with probably an urgent update that you'll want to hear. Over the past 48 hours, a true flow of rumors have been unleashed through Kyiv and Washington. Whispers that the United States might allow Ukraine to field the long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles, basically weapons capable of reaching deep into Russian territory and cause a lot of damage. The journalists and officials are all circling this story, and Kremlin has already responded angrily, calling any such move a dangerous escalation between the US and the terrorist federation. So why is everyone suddenly talking about the Tomahawks? Well, because those are precise long-range cruise missiles that were built to strike high-value targets from hundreds and even thousands of kilometers away, with a payload and guidance that generally makes them truly a strategic tool rather than a tactical one. And generally speaking, their range and accuracy are exactly why Kyiv wants those missiles and why Moscow treats this idea as a new crossing of Russia's red lines. At the same time, please don't let the headlines fool you, because the US military planners and numbers provided by the defense industry showed that Tomahawk stocks and production are actually quite limited, and senior US officials also say that the shipments are unlikely. So in this video we will unpack what Tomahawks can do, what they cannot do, and how the terrorist federation has publicly responded to that, what that reaction could mean for the so-called Russia's escalation, and why even the talks of these missiles is reshaping the strategy in Kyiv, in Washington, and beyond. So stay close. The origin story is that over the last couple of days, the US and European outlets started buzzing that Washington is weighing whether to greenlight the Tomahawks for Ukraine or not. And as a response, Putin immediately did his new level of escalation routine at Valdai.
Нанесет ли это ущерб нашим отношениям, в которых наметился какой-то свет в конце туннеля? Конечно, нанесет. Ну а как же? Применять томагавки без прямого участия американских военнослужащих невозможно. Это будет означать абсолютно новый, качественно новый этап эскалации, в том числе в отношениях между Россией и Соединенными Штатами.
I mean, the famous Russian brown lines that cannot be crossed. We've heard all that since the days the first HIMARS arrived to Ukraine. However, at the same time, the US officials quietly told reporters that as of now, actual shipments are sort of unlikely because Navy stocks are tight. But the fact is, even this chatter matters because it basically signals where the whole policy might be headed. Now, why are people even talking about Tomahawks? Because range plus precision equals pressure, and as you probably understand, pressure is the point. Since early August, Ukraine has been hammering Russia's oil infrastructure deep inside its territory with drones. Depending on the outlet and the week you check, we're talking roughly 16 to 21 of Russia's 38 refineries hit. How bad is it in Russia right now? So currently multiple Russian regions from the Volga to Crimea are actually experiencing queues and quotas. For example, in Crimea, the quotas are about 10 to 20 liters of fuel per car. Reuters counted the shortages in more than 10 regions in late September. Moscow Times called it a gasoline crisis, and Bloomberg also flagged Russia's oil exports sliding big time as refineries keep burning. The fact is, a month of strike on the Russian oil industry since August this year caused a lot of results that you cannot simply hide with TV propaganda and stories in Valdai that everything is going according to Putin's plan. So why would Kyiv even look at Tomahawks on top of drones and ATACMS? To answer that, we actually gotta think layers. The drones are cost effective, they are constant, ATACMS hits a certain band, and Tomahawks would push reliable heavy warheads much deeper into Russian territory using its terrain-hugging flight profiles. In human language, you complicate the geometry of the Russian air defense, you stretch their radar coverage, and you also make the big and expensive stuff like refineries, depots, like command nodes, a lot less safe. And of course, Moscow calls that a red line. I mean, of course they would, because they're actually hurting from strikes that didn't even involve Tomahawks. The bottom line is that the rumors popped because Ukraine's deep strike campaign since August is working. It's working visibly, it's working effectively, and now the policymakers are kind of asking, do we lean in? And whether the Tomahawks actually get shipped is still a big we'll see. But the logic behind the talks is simple. Keep the pressure on the Russian war machine where it is vulnerable. We're talking fuel, logistics, and psychology. Because generally it's very obvious that an image of a burning Russian oil refinery somewhere on the horizon of the Russian city serves as a good reminder for the Russian citizens that Russia is well within their reach and that the long-range strikes is actually a game for two. Now, what are the capabilities of the Tomahawk missiles? Let's talk a bit about this as well. The US-produced Tomahawks are long-range precision-guided missiles that fly low and slow compared to ballistic missiles, but at the same time they're very good at staying under the radar and arriving where they are supposed to. The typical range run up to about 1,600 kilometers for modern variants, or approximately 1,000 miles. The missile's guidance is based on inertial navigation, GPS, and terrain matching, and also there is a bunch of recent upgrades improving navigation and communications. The Tomahawk is one of the most well-known long-range weapons in the US arsenal as of today. As far as I remember, the Tomahawk has been in service since the 80s, but it has been updated again and again, and today it's still one of the most reliable tools for striking high-value targets far from the front lines. Over the years, Tomahawks have been seen in dozens of operations, from Iraq to Syria to Libya. For example, in 2011, at the start of the Libyan operation, the US and the UK ships fired around 112 Tomahawks to knock down Libyan air defenses and open the door for a no-fly zone, which I think is a classic case because Tomahawks are designed to take out fixed radars, command sites, and surface-to-air missiles locations, so for example the aircraft can work safer. In April 2017, the US launched 59 Tomahawks at Syria's Shayrat air base after the chemical attack committed by the Bashar Assad's regime. The Pentagon reported that the missiles successfully hit aircraft, reinforced aircraft shelters, fuel tanks, ammo storage, air defenses, and radars. The US officials also said that they deliberately tried not to crater the runway, and the focus was on the aircraft and support infrastructure. Tomahawks are primarily launched from ships and submarines. There are ground options in the United States that are being tested, but the standard play is naval, and of course the stocks are not infinite. However, if Ukraine were to get them, what would be the difference compared to what it has now? Because, as I already mentioned in this video, Ukraine already has drones, which are cheap, which can reach deep inside Russia, but they often carry a smaller payload. Ukraine also has ATACMS, which are powerful, but again they are shorter in range, usually a few hundred kilometers. The Tomahawk would fill the gap because it's a weapon that can hit much deeper with a heavier warhead and with very precise navigation. If you're planning to pressure an opponent's depots, command nodes, or air defense radars at long range, this is exactly the kind of tool that you're looking for. And the fact is That is why these rumors matter, not because the missile is magic, but because it is proven. And that is another reason Putin was so anxious in Valdai, talking for a whole minute to his slaves, citizens, and explaining to them that Tomahawks will not change anything on the battleground in Ukraine. He also mentioned that the terrorist federation may eventually adapt its air defenses to intercept Tomahawks like they adapted to Ukrainian drones. I'm not really sure, maybe he was talking about actually using his oil refineries to intercept Ukrainian missiles, or maybe relocating his air defenses to defend his palaces scattered all over Russia. It's very unclear. But the fact is the Tomahawks are making him very anxious. And personally, to me, the funniest thing he said in Valdai was that Russia is not fighting against Ukraine, but in fact it successfully wages a war against the whole NATO, which is kind of cringy considering that Russia already lost more than 1 million soldiers and NATO didn't even show up. Okay, so can Russia intercept Tomahawk cruise missiles if they were fired from Ukraine? Short answer is maybe sometimes, but not reliably enough to make Putin comfortable. And the fact is that uncertainty is exactly why this whole rumor is sowing panic all over the Moscow. First, some basics you should know. The Tomahawks fly relatively low and follow the contour of the terrain, and they are subsonic. They are not hypersonic, so they're not impossible to intercept, but because they fly low, they're harder to spot on radar until they are relatively close. And multiple recent write-ups and analysts point to that detection problem as the central challenge for the Russian terrorists. Second, intercepting cruise missiles at scale is a sensor and systems problem more than a pure missile versus missile problem. To have a good chance, you need layered radars, you need overlapping coverage, good command and control to cue interceptors, and a mix of weapons to engage at different ranges. Basically, you can harder a few points, but you cannot physically blanket an entire country's interior cheaply, because you also need air defenses to protect your invaders in Donbass, and also Putin's palaces and bunkers. Third, has Russia practiced or modeled their defense against the possible Tomahawk attack? Basically, yes, there are different war games, there are exercises, classified modeling that looks at layered air defense versus cruise missiles. Many OSINT experts today indicate that Russia currently studies how to adapt. Basically, the Russian terrorists are shifting longer range missiles, moving point defenses, integrating new radars, and trying to experiment with different mixes of sensors. But as many analysts say, the process of adapting is painfully slow and, of course, expensive. And partially that is why Putin is getting so animated and frankly nervous when he talks about the Tomahawks. And finally, the real-world evidence, because Russia has struggled to stop some of Ukraine's strikes involving the cruise missiles. For example, the most famous fact when the cruiser Moskva was hit and later sank in April 2022. And cruise ships built by Russia usually have a lot of air defenses installed on them. And this is a clear case when Russian defenses failed to prevent a ship being hit. And then in September 2023, Kyiv struck the Black Sea Fleet headquarters in Sevastopol, doing serious damage to command facilities and eliminating a lot of high-ranked Russian officers. It was another public example where long-range strikes successfully breached Russian protection. Those incidents demonstrate that Russian air defense and fleet protection are not invulnerable, especially when attacks are unexpected, when they're well prepared, when they use different vectors or exploit gaps. So the bottom line, if Tomahawks or similar missiles ever did arrive in Ukrainian hands, of course, Russia would definitely try to intercept them to protect Russian oil refineries and other strategic objects. The Russians have the systems that can intercept those missiles in principle, but not necessarily everywhere or all the time. And though the studies and war games show ways to improve defenses, and Russians are trying to adapt, but improving defenses at such scale as they requires a lot of time and resources. And generally speaking, all those cases when Russia's air defense failed to stop Ukrainian cruise missiles are the proof points everyone is looking at when they argue about whether the Tomahawks would be a game changer or just another headache for Moscow. With that, my dear friends, I wish you all a beautiful day. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe. My name is Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.